So good morning, students. You don't need to know about Python for this to get something out of this workshop. I know students who are doing A-levels learn about Python, but maybe you don't learn about this graphical user interface. So we thought like that might be something interesting for you. Yeah. So if you have any questions, please let me know. So by the way, I'm Dr. Nuwan Kodaguda. I'm once again from SLIT, from the Faculty of Computing. So let me start the session. So basically, these are the three things that I want to cover. I want to talk a little bit about Python, but mainly I want to talk about a package called Tkinter, which is actually a graphical user interface development package. It is a standard one. It's the standard one that comes with the Python language. And as I said, like if you haven't done Python before, still you can get something out of this. So it's very basic kind of concepts that we will try to cover. So maybe you have heard about this guy, Van Rossmann. He's from Holland. Let me see, there's a question. So this is about coding. So Van Rossmann is from Holland, and he was working on this Python language in the 1980s, and the first version of Python came in 1991. And actually, Python doesn't refer to the snake. So this image here is about the Python snake, but actually the name comes from a famous comedy group called Monty Python. You may not know about them because they were a group in the previous generation. So in the 1970s and all that, like they were very popular. Python is a scripting language, and today it's used widely. So it's one of the most popular languages around, and it's used widely in the artificial intelligence, machine learning community. So if you take a scripting language, basically you can run programs line by line. You have that advantage. So there are different types of programming languages. So I think you have heard about Java, and also like maybe C, C++. So they are traditionally compiled. But this works in a slightly different kind of way. So if you want to work with Python, if you don't have Python with you, so we will share these links as well, the slide deck as well. You can go to python.org and then get the latest download. And then this is the environment that you need to run Python. So one of you was asking about what is the best coding environment. There are many editors available. This Visual Studio Code is a very popular editor that is there, but you can use any editor, Notepad or anything like that to type your code. In fact, using Visual Studio Code, you can write programs in many different languages. Right? So this is a very popular IDE that is used, but there are so many. Now, for today's session, actually, I will use an online IDE. So there's a reason why I want to use an online IDE, because I can actually share the code that I'm writing directly to you. And without installing anything on your computer, you should be able to run the programs that I am sharing with you. So that is the reason I chose this one. It's called repl.it. I'll just, we'll actually go into that later on, and then I will show you how that environment works. So actually, if you want to use an online IDE, you don't need to install anything. You can just type in the program and work. So, so one of the things that I want to highlight is, I'm not sure whether you have done Python programming before. These are some Python code. So in any programming language, even if you have not done Python and if you have done programming, there are these, I would say like three fundamental concepts, and you can also think about functions. So the first fundamental concept in programming is sequence, the order in which you give instructions. So if you have learned Python the normal way, maybe these commands might be something that you're familiar with. This is to input a number. This is to input the second number, and input is a command that will allow you to input something from the keyboard. And this is converted to an integer. Then there's a calculation, and the sum is printed. So these instructions are given in a particular order. So you have to do the calculation before you print the answer. That is why the sequence is important. You also come across selection. Now in the Python language, it's a bit strange because like we need to, so we are trying to say like we are asking someone's age, And I think you should be able to understand this even if you haven't done programming. So we are saying, okay, if the age is less than 13, we want to say it's child, but 13 to 19, teenager. So this is else if, and then otherwise we can say it's an adult. Now you might notice, like in Python, we use this indentation. So unlike other programming languages, we use indentation to include the commands that we are using. And yeah, so if you haven't done Python, that's fine. You will get something out of this. But think about some programming language that you know, because here the discussion today is about Python and how to develop graphical user interfaces. We have some other workshops coming up, so you can learn about those things as well if you are really interested. Now, here is repetition. So basically in selection, what happens is, like, depending on certain conditions, certain actions will be taken. So like it will print this message depending on the student's age. Repetition is basically repeating things. So here, this is some code that will print numbers 1 to 10. So this is how you write repetition in Python. In other languages, you might use brackets and things like that. So initially here number is 1, and then it will keep on printing number as long as number is less than or equal to 10. Now, when you write large programs, you also break programs into what we call functions. So here's how you define a function in Python. We will see this in today's code. So this is an add function, and there are 3 parameters. One thing that you will notice is, like, there's no declaration. We don't define these data types like integer, string, like that in Python. And in this line here, we are actually printing using the print command and then calling this add function. And you can see here there are 3 arguments. 90 will go to number 1, 50 will go to number 2, and 30 will go to number 3. And then this calculation is done, and this answer is returned. So in any programming language, you will find these 4 concepts: sequence, selection, repetition, functions. So I just wanted to show you the syntax or the way that we write code in Python. So if you have any questions, you can ask. Yeah, so if you are in smaller grades like grade 4 and all that, probably you might want to try an environment like Scratch. But even Python is okay. We have seen students, even grade 4, grade 5 students using Python. But in today's session, we are going to talk about how to develop GUIs using this particular language. But we have other sessions, like, for example, tomorrow we have a session on Scratch. So if you are from grade 2 or grade 4, that might be more appropriate for you. Okay, now these are the things that I want to cover. I want to show you how to use this Tkinter library. It's a package. So this is the default package that comes with Python. And this TK library is a fairly popular one, and you can develop GUIs. So we use this term called widget. It is a graphical component like a button, text box, label. And we actually develop GUIs by arranging and combining different widgets on the screen. So I will actually show you some live code as we go along. So let's have a look at a very simple, like a hello world kind of program using Tkinter. So Tkinter is actually a package. So in Python, you can use packages. So that's one of the strengths of Python. So we are saying here to import everything that is there in Tkinter. That is the command that you normally give in front. And then to create a window, we can call this class. There's a class, or we can call it a command if you like. It's called TK with T capital and simple K. And this will actually generate a window like this. And all you need is, like, we need to have something called an event loop, so that your Windows environment will respond to mouse click events and various keyboard events that can happen. So you need to have this root main loop command. So let's actually try this out and then see whether it works. So if you go to REPL, this is the online editor that I told you about. Reason why I'm using an online editor is because then it's easy for you to run this code later on after the session today. I'll share this. I have already logged in. if you haven't logged in, you can actually go to REPL and then create an account. So I will not show you that because just if you go under this URL, you can create an account and start using it. So I'll actually go to something that I have already created. So I have something called workshop, which is basically a Python one. So basically, like when you want to create a program, it will ask you for the language and then you can write code here. So first thing that we have to do, as I said, is to use this, is to actually import this package. So I have to say from, this is to actually import everything that is there. Let me increase the font size that you can see it clearly. And then what I have to do is like, this is just a variable. And I have to say, I'm creating a window here. And I have to say, it's actually TK. So you can think of it as a command, but it's actually a class. We are creating a window class. And then I have to have this main loop, which is basically the event handler loop. So this is the minimum code that you need to write. And if I run this, you can see this window, right? This window is there. I can maximize it. So this command actually creates a window. Now, if I want to display something, I can have buttons. I can create labels. So let's create a label. So I'll create a label called, let's call it my label. This is just a variable. And so this label is actually another, it's a component called a class. So we can, it's there in Tkinter. So what I can do is like, I can say this label should come in this window called root. Root is just a name that I have given. And I can say I want to display hello world. Now in Python, here I'm actually calling a function. And you can actually give the name of the parameters that you're passing. So I'm passing this text parameter and then I'm assigning the value hello world. Now, if I try to run this program again, I will not see any difference. This label doesn't appear. The reason is like I have to put it onto the window. So to put it to the window, I have to say my label, and there are multiple commands that you can use. So I could simply say pack. Now this pack command will actually place this label in this window and I should be able to see it. So now if I run this, you can see it says hello world. And this is the simplest program that you can write, using Python. So you can actually move this window around. You can make this larger. This window will, the text will actually adjust itself. So there's one question. Okay, this is about the grade 4 student, right? So if you are going to miss one of the sessions, we will actually record these sessions and make it available through the CodeFest website, right? So if you have any questions, you can maybe ask, right? So let's put another label. So I'll say CodeFest label or something. This is just a variable. So I can have another one. So we'll say here CodeFest 2021, right? So this text is actually the message that comes. And once again, like I have to place this. So the easiest way to place this on the window is to use the pack command, right? So let's run this code after stopping it. So yeah, I think it didn't actually work because there was an error here. So you would have seen any error here, right? So if you have any errors, it will actually show you this over there. So I'll run this again. You can see that now it prints, hello world CodeFest. You can actually maximize, minimize, and do those kinds of things, right? Yeah, so you can actually develop any kind of app using Python or any other programming language, right? But this is a Windows kind of application. It's not a website. We are not using this Tkinter. You are developing GUIs that will run on a desktop, right? But you can actually create an application that will connect to a database and retrieve data. It is possible. Okay, so that's basically how you create a very simple kind of like command. So let's actually try to see, like you might have seen like GUIs like this with buttons. So this is actually called a button, and then you have a message. So let's say that we want to click on a button, and then when you click on the button, we want to display this message, right? So we'll modify this program to do that. So so if you want to have a button, what you do is like you must give a name for your button. We'll say my button 1. So there's a command called button. So always, like when you are creating a widget, so label is a widget, button is a widget, you have to place it to the window that you are creating. So root is it's just a name. I can call it anything else. I can call it ABC. Then that will be my main window, and I have to place my widgets in that particular window. So I will have a text for this. So I'll say click. Normally in a button, you have some kind of a text. And then I had to write the name of the function that I want to invoke. So I'll say I want to write a function called button click. So so this refers to the function that I will write. So function is basically a simple code that I write. So in Python, this is how you write a function. The functions need to have arguments, but one thing that you need to remember is like when you actually kind of like indicate what is the function that you want to run, we don't use brackets here. So brackets are not used here. We are actually giving the name of the function to run. So here, let's say I want to, when this button is clicked, I want to maybe change one of these text messages, right? So maybe like I want to change hello world to maybe SLII, right? Maybe that's what I want to do, or maybe your school name, right? So what I'll do is like I can say, so this is actually called the text property. Now there are lots of different ways of doing this. Now normally, like when you write programs, if you search the internet, there are lots of different ways of doing the same thing. I want to change the text of this label to, let's say, SLII, or maybe a name of a school. So this is one way of doing it. So we can give the name of the label or component, and the property is text. So I can actually write it like this using square brackets. So in Python, you can actually access this text property like this. There are two other ways of doing it, but I think this is the easiest way. We can see that we want to change the text to something else. So let's say SLIIT. So this will change to SLIIT when you actually click this button, right? Now this button, although you create the button, it won't appear. So I have to place it. So I can say my button 1.pack. So when you give this pack command, so always is two-step process. You define the widget, and then you have to place it. So only when you place it, it comes in the UI. And in here, we are saying, okay, if you click the button, then it should run this code. So this is an example of a function. This name has to be exactly like this. So if I call this button with simple B, then this also has to be button with simple B, right? Whatever, you can give any name, and you write the commands that you want to execute if this button is clicked. So let me run this code. Now you can see the button here. So it says Hello World CodeFest 2021. Now when I click here, it changes to slit, because when I click this button, it runs this code, and here I'm changing the text property to slit. It's a very simple program that does that, right? So I will actually share this code with you so that you can actually have a look at it. So do you have any questions? I think so far there. So if you have any questions, please let me know, right? Now, one of the other things that you might want to do is you might want to input some value. So if you want to input some value, there is a command. You might have seen TEXTBOXES. In the Tkinter library, it's actually called an entry. It has a rather funny name because normally it's called, we call it a text box, but here it's called an entry. So maybe like we want to, type someone's name, and then when you click it, it'll actually say, okay, you are good morning, and then give the person's name. We want to write a program like this, right? So let's see how to do that. So we already have something. So let's work on the same program and then try to add this. What we don't have is this text box. So let's try to create a text box. And then when we click this button, we will say like good morning, and then take the name from here and then display it. So we want to write a very simple program like that. So, so maybe like we'll just leave these things as it is, and maybe we'll try to have a text box here. So we'll say name, right? You can give any name. You can give something meaningful. First of all, let me put a label. Or let's just only put the text box, right? We'll just say name, and this is called an entry. This is how you specify. This is the widget that will allow you to input values. Once again, like always, you give the name of the main window, and then you can specify the width. You know how much characters you want to have, how much space you want to have. So let me say it's about 10 characters. So I'll say 10, and now this order of this stacking is important. So let me actually bring all these commands together so that we can see the order in which they are placed on the window. So the first thing that we are placing is actually this label. So we have this label which says hello world, and then we have this code festing, and we have a button. So let's put the text box before that. So text box is name. We'll pack that in. And this time, for the click event, we will actually get the name from the text box. So we have this text box over here. Let's actually run this code, right? And see what happens. So here I want to type a name like, say, Ajit or Anil, let's say. And then when I click this, I want a message to come somewhere, right? But now, of course, nothing happens because it's running this code. Let's say I want to say hello, Anil. Right? So instead of saying like I want to say hello, Anil. So Anil is actually, it's this component called name. So when you click this button, it runs this code. So I have actually written the button click event. So I can change this one. So I'll say, okay, hello. And now I want to get this content from this text box. Text box is called name. And in most components in this Tkinter, you can use the get command to retrieve the content that is there. So what I can do is like in Python, you can connect two variables together, character variables together like this. And then I can say name dot get. So by the way, like I'm not sure whether you have heard about this thing called object orientation. You don't really need to know. This is actually a function. So we are saying, okay, there is this text box called name. Now, how I know that this is a text box is because like I have created this widget like this. So this is the command for a text box. And to retrieve this value, what the user has typed, I can use this get function. So you will say the name of the component or widget dot get. And it is usually character data that you get. So you can actually combine these things. So we'll say hello. Shall we say like good morning after this, right? So we are going to say like hello, whatever name, good morning, right? And now this code will be executed when you click this, click on this button. That's because like I have set command is this to execute. So let's run this. So I'm going to say Ajit. Then when I click on this, it says hello. That comes from this characters here. Ajit is coming from this text box. And good morning is this part that I have written. Right. So it's very simple. So you can very easily create text boxes. You can have many text boxes. And then when you click on this, you can do many things. Right. So do you have any questions? So let me show you something that I have done beforehand. Yeah. So, so this is some code I have written before. And you can see here, I have name, grade, and school. I have some labels. And then I have some text boxes. And when this button is clicked, I'm saying, okay, I'm getting the name of the student. That is actually this line, this component here. Then I'm saying who is in grade, and then I'm taking this part. And then I'm actually getting this the school name here, right? The school name is entry 3, right? Now in here, actually, I have many programs. I will share this code with you. So I will actually run this program. It's called school. So by the way, if you're running Python from the command line, you would say Python and then the name of the program. So this particular program is actually called school.py. So I'll run that program. You can see that it asks me for the name. And one other thing you'll notice is like this is nicely arranged. So this is a different arrangement. So I'll say Janaka. Let's say he's in grade 8 and goes to Sifatana. And then when I click on this, you can see like it says like, okay, Janaka, who's in grade 8, goes to Sifatana. So you can create very, whatever thing that comes to your mind, you can create nice applications like this. So this has some additional things which I will explain as we go along, right? Okay. So do you have any questions you'd like to ask? Right. Now, one of the things that you notice in this example is this looks much better than the previous one, right? So there is this arrangement where you can create fairly complicated GUIs. And this is actually using something called a grid. Now you need to know this row and label called name, which I have put here. And this is a text box. You can see this is a fairly, this is a fairly large, lengthy one. This is a fairly less lengthy one. So this one here is actually row 0, column 0. Then this text box is actually, the row is this way. So it's row 0, column 1. If you take this particular one, we actually use 0 as the starting point, right? So most in computers, like we use 0 as the starting number. So that's why you have row 0, column 0. If you take grade, that is actually row 1, column 0. If you take the school text box, that should be row 2, column 1. Do you kind of get the idea, like how this is, right? So we can use this grid command to actually place this instead of using tag, right? So let's maybe let's try a new example. I think it might be good to think of something new. So I'll actually create a new file, call it grid.py. So by the way, you can create your own files as well. So let me copy some essential things from here, and then we'll try to create a very simple program. So this is the root, and then we need to say root. Sorry. This is the main event that you have. So let's actually have a arrangement like where we have something like, we'll ask for the name. So we need to have a label. We'll call it name label. So I think you understand this part. So label is something that has some text. So we'll have name like that. And then we want to have, we want to input the person's name. So we'll say name text, which is an entry widget. So in an entry widget, like you can specify the width. We'll say width is 20. Then let's have one more thing, like we could have the age maybe. We'll say age label. A label is basically like anything that we want to put in. And we'll say text is equal to age. And we'll get a value for this. So that will be an entry. Let's put maybe like something like 10 here, which is a smaller value. And we need to have a button as well. Oh, we'll just only put this, right? We'll forget about buttons. Now I want to place them in a nice grid. So this will be, I want to put this in the, so by the way, in Python, we can use this hash for comments. I want to put this in row 0, column 1, so column 0, right? And then this one I want to put in row 0, column 1. Then this one I want to put in the second row, the one below that. So let's say row 1, column 0. And the last one I want to put it in row 1, column 1. Right? So this is what I want to do. So it's very easy. So what I have to do is like I have to say, okay, name, label. So there's this command called grid. And then I have to just specify the row and column. So in Python, we can actually specify parameters like this. So we can say row 0, column 0. That's how you pass it. If this name, you must give it correctly. Then the name text, I want it to come in row, the same row, but column should be 1. Right? Then the age label, I want it to come in the next row. You can say row 1, column 0, and then age text, you can say row 1, column 1. Right? And so this should do the trick. So let's actually run this program now. I have actually given a second program. So normally, like in this REPL environment, when you run a program, it will only run this main program. If you want it to run some other program, you can actually do it. Maybe you would like to create a new program and do it. But I will, if you want to type the program and run it, you can go under shell and then actually type in the program. So I could actually say Python. Python is the interpreter, and then run the program by giving the name of the program. If you just normally use the run command, it will only run the one that is there in the main program. Right? So let's run this. So there is a error. That's this one over here. Then let's run this again. So you can see, it comes out nicely like this, right? So this is what you get. But can you see there's a problem now? These are not coming nicely. So maybe like you want this to be aligned to the left side, right? If you want this aligned to the left side, in Python you have left side is actually called west, right side is called east, up is north, down is south. So I can actually specify, yeah, so it's something called sticky. You have to give the direction. So I can say sticky W. So it comes to, it's aligned to the left side. You can see it's not really aligned to the left side, but if I add this command, everything will be aligned to the left side, right? If that's what you want. So maybe you can do it collectively. So let me add this command. It's called sticky. So it will be aligned to that particular side. And now if I stop this and then run, you can see it's much nicer, right? So this is how you use the grid system. This sticky means like the direction that you want to stick. So for example, like if you actually say the text is east, right? And then run this, it will be different. It's aligned to the right hand side. East is the right hand side, right? So maybe you want to align it to the left side, or maybe you want to align it to the top. So this is basically how you kind of like do that. So setting up a grid is really not that difficult, and then you can write programs with a nice graphical user interface. Okay, just looking at the time. Yeah, so this is basically how you do that. So you can come up with fairly complicated programs. So maybe I'll just show you this one where you can actually enter something and then do a calculation. So you can see like this is set up in a grid, and at the bottom you have this kind of calculation. So you can get numbers and do calculations as well. So if I actually show you the calculator program, which I will share this code with you later on. So let me reshare this again. So here I have this, let me run this program and then show you what this is actually. This one is actually called calculator. So it's a very simple calculator. So if you type in like 50 and 2, then the area is actually 100, perimeter is 104, outside length is 104. So how do you do this kind of thing? So I think this arrangement you can understand. The trick is the calculation. So for the calculation, what you do is, let me show you the code. So you need to get these values and then convert it to a number. So here you can use this entry length is my text box for the length, and entry width is the text box for the width. You can use the get command to take it. Usually these are characters, but if you want to convert them into a number, you can convert it to a number with decimal places using float. If your number doesn't have decimal places, we can use int. And then in this case, I have taken it with numbers with decimal places. So length and width are floating numbers with decimal places, and you can do calculation. So this is a calculation, calculate the area, and this is a calculation to calculate the perimeter. And then this is called label answer. So I'm changing the text one. So I'm saying area is. So if you want to convert a number into string, you can use str. So if you have done Python, you probably know this. But in most languages, you can convert numbers into string, string into numbers, right? And you can come up with various kind of programs like this. So I will share this code with you so that you can maybe play around with this later on. So you can see I have used this sticky command to get them all aligned to the left side. So that is possible, right? Okay. So let me go on to something else. So you can work with images. For this, there are multiple ways of doing this. So one way is to use a package called Pillow. You have to install this Pillow package, and then this may not come by default, so you have to install it. And then from this Pillow package, you have to take these two components. There's one called image tk and image, and here you can actually give the name of a file, JPEG file, GIF file. This line number 9 is not important. Here I'm actually resizing it. You don't need to do that. And then you need to use this image tk photo image command. And whatever you put here or here, you have to put it and then put it into another variable. And you can assign it to a label. Basically, you can put it to a label. Instead of text, you use this parameter called image. And then you can put in a label there, right? So once again, like I will actually show you an example. So this is actually, okay, this is a more complicated one. Let me see if I have a simpler version of this. Yeah. So, so if you take this, like there are some files. I have actually put some files here. So it will actually load one of those files here. So it's going to load this file called codefest1.jpg. You need to have this file in the same folder as your program, right? So if you have the program, whatever folder where you have the program, if you have the images, you can just load it using this code. So sometimes, like when you are developing an interesting application, you may need images, and you can even change images. So let me actually run the version which allows you to change images. So here I'm writing some code where actually it's changing this number. I will show you this is a little bit more complicated than the previous one, but yeah, so but you get the idea, you'll get an idea about like what kind of things you can do. So it's called viewer.py. So this will actually load an image, and you will see that there are buttons here. So this button has some, there are some events written here. So you can actually go through basically images that you have, right? Multiple images that you have. So I have written two buttons, one for left navigation and one for right navigation, right? But it's basically an extension of what I did. It's the same kind of commands, but done in a slightly different way. So you can use graphics in your GUIs to make your applications more interesting. But the basic idea is this, where you can use this pillow command, pillow package rather, And then you can actually bring in any kind of image into your program. Now, if you are really developing a UI, maybe you need to have better ways of doing it. So you might have, maybe you want to design something like this. So this is a much better arrangement because you may have a lot of inputs that you want to take. And you might have seen things like this, right? So these are like frames. These are called label frames. And you can come up with very complicated GUIs very easily. So what happens is like, if you want to have this kind of arrangement, you need to have this command called label frame. So let me show you what I mean. So there is this component called label frame. Now in this form, there are 4 such frames. So there is one label frame called main details frame. The second one is called school details. You can see the school details one is the one here. This is the school details one. And this is the contact details one. This is the extracurricular activities one. You can see in each of these ones, you have the name of the window and this text here. You can see the text here is main details. So you can see main details here. Here you have school details. So that comes here. And then you have contact details. That is the one that comes here. You can see these parameters pad X and pad Y. That is the spacing. You can see there's a gap, right? You want to have a nice gap between these. So that is the spacing, like 10 pixels to the left, 10 pixels to the top and bottom. So you can see there is a spacing. So it comes out nicely. So you need to have frames like this. And if you take this frame, I have 6 components. I have a name label, name text box, age label, age text box, gender label, gender text box. So these ones I can create, but this time you have to put these inside main details frame. So let me show you. So you can see here, I have a label, 3 labels for the name, age, and gender. They are labels. Then I have 3 input boxes. First one is called name text box. Its width is 35. You can see it's long. Next one is width is 10. So it's a small one. Gender text box is also 10. But look at this. I am actually putting it under the frame called main details frame. Not under root. But this one is under root. Right? So you can see that these 4 components are under the main window. Then you can create these label frames, and then you, whatever components you want to have, these widgets that you want, you can place them nicely. So then you can use either the pack command or the grid command to place these things. Right? So in this particular case, I have actually used the grid command to place the 4 frames. And then inside this, I have put another set of grid commands to place them, each of these components inside the frame. Right? So, so that is basically like how you can do those kinds of complicated UIs. Right? So once again, like I will share this one with you so that you can work on it. So it's very easy to come up with complicated forms like this, not very difficult, right? So there are other components that you might have come across, like these are radio buttons. So in a radio button, what you do is like, once again, you use a frame like this. So inside a frame, you can put these radio button components. You can see this is actually referring to this portion here. So I have 4 radio buttons inside this frame called flavor frame. So this frame here is defined like earlier. But you know, in option buttons, you can select only one. So here we have something, a new component called variable. Now this text, I think you can understand. So chocolate, mango, vanilla, strawberry. It's basically picking these things up. But you need to have a variable because like only one of these can be there. And in Python, in Tkinter, you can Tkinter, you can use this particular notation. So I have a variable called flavor. If it's an integer, I can say int var. If it's a string, I can say string var. If it's a float, I can say float var. You have to define your variable like this. Then this one, you refer it here. So in all of these 4 components, you have only one variable. Now, when I say set, so basically you can get the value that is selected by using the get command. If you want to assign something, you can use the set value. And the values I have taken numerical values. You can take string values as well. But in this example, I have taken the values like if it is chocolate, I'm taking it as 1. Mango, I'm taking it as 2. Vanilla as 3. strawberry as 4. If you want, value can be chocolate, mango, vanilla, strawberry as well, right? And so you can do very interesting things with this. So once again, let me show you this one because we don't have much time. These radio buttons, these are called radio buttons. And I will show you how that works. So you can see, I can select anything. Only one can be selected. In an option button, you can select only one, right? If I select ice cream and mango and then click here, it will say you have selected ice cream with mango flavor topping. So here, this is a topping. So if I say fruit salad and vanilla, it will say fruit salad with vanilla topping. So you can see that you can only select one, and these are called what we call option buttons. You can see, sorry, radio buttons. You can see radio buttons. So you already have seen how this kind of thing works, right? Here I have used the pack command, not the grid command. You can use the grid command as well. And when you want to retrieve something like I want to get a dessert, you what the user has selected, I can use this get command to find that out. Okay, so let me show you a few more things before we kind of go out of this session. You can also use checkboxes. In checkboxes, you can actually select multiple ones. So a check button will refer to multiple variables, not one. So because like you can select multiple things. So like, for example, if this is selected, you are saying, I want to have fruit salad and ice cream with the chocolate flavor topping, right? So maybe you want to select multiple kind of desserts. Then these check boxes are more appropriate, check buttons are more appropriate for this. Here, obviously, the variables will be different because they cannot be the same, right? And you may want to have drop-down kind of things. So these are called combo boxes. Now, if you are using a combo box, sometimes this Tkinter works slightly in a weird kind of way because like you have to explicitly take this combo box from a package called TTK. So let me kind of explain why that is necessary. So sometimes you might actually come across some weird kind of thing. So TTK is actually a package. It's actually a submodule inside TTK. If you know a little bit of Python, you know that normally when you say import site should bring everything in. But the way that the designers, the people who developed Tkinter had developed this is actually what we call a submodule. So you have to explicitly take this in. Now, for the check combo box to work, you have to explicitly mention TTK. Now, for these other ones, you don't need to, like label, entry, other ones you don't need to, but you need to refer to this particular module in order to use a combo box. So that's a little bit weird. So if you just try combo box, you will get an error. So like if you just write the code like this, it will not work. Label will work, but combo box will not work, right? It will actually generate an error. If you run this, it won't work, right? So if you get errors like that, actually the reason is because of this particular reason, right? And you can have multiple windows. So if you want to have a new window, you just simply inside the button, you say top level. Top level will create a new window. So because like when you're developing applications, you need to have multiple UIs. So whenever you say top level, then so we have the root thing, but you can have additional windows that you can invoke by calling this code, and then inside this you can put anything that you want. So actually, if you click this button multiple times, there'll be multiple windows that come. And of course, menus, right? So let me run this and then show you how easy it is to create menus, because that's probably the final thing that you might want to do. So if I run this particular code, it's not very difficult to create menus. So you can create menus just like any other Windows program. So you can see this is the file menu, right? And this is the edit menu. This is the help menu. So maybe you want to create something like this. Now, when you click this button, you want to do something. Of course, here I'm not doing anything. I'm just creating a window. But maybe you want to do something when you select cut, right? So, so if you want to create windows, what you do is, menus. You use this menu command. So the first menu that you have is called the you just use menu and then you create a root. And you can see here, I have 3 submenus. So to create 3 submenus, you have the file menu, which is this one, edit menu, which is this one, help menu, which is this one. So you actually write the code like this. This tear off is actually to remove a dotted line. So, so let me show you what I mean. So if I actually don't have this tear off, you should be able to see tear off here. So if I remove this, then it looks slightly different. That's why we use tear off. So now if you look at this, you can see this dashed line. There's this dashed line that comes if you don't say tear off. So maybe you don't want this dashed line. So then we can actually say tear off and then do that, right? That's why we do that. And then of course, once we have created these main menus, we need to say that, okay, we want to add them as cascade. Cascade means like submenus. So this is where you define the name, like file, the text comes here, then edit comes here, help comes here, and then we kind of assign it to the specific one. And then ultimately we need to configure this by writing this code. And then the way that you create this sub details is like this. We use the add command. So if you, to create the new one, we will say like file menu, which is something that we created, add command, label is new. This is the command we want to run when the new button is clicked. When you click open, this is the label, this is how the text appears, and this is what we want to do. If it is save, this is what we want to do, like that, right? And you might see this separator. So there's a specific one called add separator, which you can use for that. So, so that's basically some of the main things that I want to cover. And when you are using, in Python, one of the things that you will probably not realize is like sometimes you might want to use global variables. So if you want to use global variables, something like this, like when you click the up button, you want to increase number by 1. When you click the down button, you want to decrease number by 1. So the way that you define a global variable is like inside the function, you can use the global keyword, but this number has to be defined outside. So when you write the code, it looks a little bit odd if you are not familiar with Python. But this way you will have this same number being referred to all over the place, including the click up function and click down function. So if you want to have a kind of like a counter that changes, like maybe in a game or something like that, maybe you want to use this global variables, right? And there are message boxes like these. You can easily create them. There are many such commands. So this is actually the one here. Are you sure? The fourth one. So there is message box ask question, and then once again here also you need to import this explicitly. Message box doesn't work automatically. You have to say Tkinter and then import this. It's a bit unusual, but then that's something that you need to do. And this are you sure is this one here. Ask question is this one, and then when you say ask question, this icon comes. Right? Each one will be different, and so if you want to generate something like this, is basically what you do. And I'll not maybe talk about this. And you can do very complicated things as well. You can do this event handling as well. So I think this would be the last one. I'll just explain this because maybe you want to create something very interactive. We have seen the mouse click events, but you can go for more complicated events as well. So to demonstrate events, let me run this, and then once again, I'll share this code with you. So let me do that right now, since you have been very patient. So you can actually access this through this URL. I'm going to put this in the chat window. So if you click on this, you will have access to this code. You can actually run these programs also. You have to create I'll show you how it works. So if I actually show you how you work on it, I'll go to a different browser. When you open it, it will come like this, right? But you can say fork REPL. When you say fork REPL, you have to create an account. So let me use something else that I have. Then you will have access to this code, right? You will have access to this code, and you can run the programs. But remember, like when you're running this program, you may have to run it like this, like go under the shell and then say Python, and when you give the name of the program, you should be able to run it, right? So let me run this particular program and then show you what this program does. So let's say I want to write a program. This yellow colored one is the one that I want to enter text. So when I go here, it will give me an instruction, right? To say like type something. So if I have to type a number. So if I just type something like this and go somewhere else, it will say like, it's not a number. When I click here again, it asks me to enter a number. If I type 900 and then come out of this, it says it's a valid number. So it's a simple validation. This is not the best way of writing validations, but I'm showing you two events. For this yellow colored box, I'm having this enter event and leave event. So enter is like when I bring the mouse here, it will actually invoke this mouse enter function. And when I go out of this, that is the mouse exit one. It's called leave. This is the name of the event. These are actually functions. So when I leave, it will actually run this code. When I enter, it will run this code. So you can see like when I come here, it will invoke this one, and then it will actually say, please enter a number, right? Look at this. When I click on this one, it will say, please enter a number. But if I go out of this, you can see here, I'm checking whether it's actually a number. If it's an error, it will display this message. If it's a valid number, it will display this message, right? So if I actually have, there are many such events, mouse events, and so many other events that you can bind. Here I have bound it to the text box, right? And there are so many things that you can do, and develop. You can develop full-blown GUI applications with mouse events, and you can actually create computer games. You can use something like, if you want to create computer games, like there's this thing called Pygame. You can develop something using Pygame and then bring it inside Tkinter. So it's possible to do that. So so we have run out of time. So thank you very much for joining today's session. So I will share this code and also, these resources to you. So if you have any questions, we can take some questions right now. But I would strongly encourage you to try out this code. So I think the best way to learn is try out these programs, play around with it. And I think you can, although we covered quite a lot within 45 minutes or so, if you're really interested, you should be able to catch this up and then, work on this. So if you want to develop an e-learning application, you have to think about what you want to do, right? So in your application, if there's a graphical user interface, this is how you create a graphical user interface. The first thing is, like as Mr. Samantha mentioned, you need to think about the solution. Maybe you want to help students learn about maths, or maybe it's social science, social studies, or science, or maybe it's about history. And then the graphical user interface development part is what we discussed in today's session. E-learning means like, something that helps students with their studies. So we have some exciting sessions lined up. Scratch, MIT App Inventor is also something that, so tomorrow we have Scratch, day after tomorrow we have MIT App Inventor. And we also have a couple of sessions on artificial intelligence. There is an introduction, and then a more programming one in January. So all these sessions will be made available. So I hope you will join CodeFest and then compete in CodeFest. So the important thing in participating in competitions like this is like you will learn a lot by trying things on your own. And hopefully these workshops will kind of motivate you to kind of like do well and come up with a very competitive and very interesting solution. Thank you very much for joining today's session.